Hello everyone, this is Dr. S. Ginil Mon, Assistant Professor of Chemistry, Nesamani Memorial Christian College, Marthandam, Kanyakumari District, Tamil Nadu, joining you to brief and enrich you on the topic Quantitative and Qualitative Research. I wholeheartedly thank the Government of Karnataka and all the organizers of this program, especially the Principal Dr. G.G. Hayarmath and Dr. S. Patel, the Program Director, for giving me this opportunity in this great platform, the 1 week national level online multidisciplinary faculty development program on research methodology, emerging perspectives, challenges and opportunities, organized by the Government First Grade College, Badam. Hearty welcome to all the participants and the organizers on behalf of the presenter. Research. Looking into few of the definitions obtained when you surf online, research is a careful and detailed study into a specific problem, concern or issue using the scientific method. It's the creation of new knowledge. It's the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way so as to generate new concepts, methodologies and understandings. It's the process of solving problems and finding facts in an organized way. To know what exactly is research, we are supposed to understand, or it is good to know, the most common types of research, that is correlational and experimental research. In correlation or the correlation research, the goal is to determine whether two or more variables are related. By the way, variables is a term with which you should be more familiar. We'll be learning a little later. A researcher may be interested in determining whether age is related to weight. In this case, a researcher may discover that age is indeed related to weight, because as age increases, weight also increases. If a correlation between two variables is strong enough, knowing about one variable allows a researcher to make a prediction about the other variable. There are several types of correlations which will be discussed in other sessions. It is important to point out, however, that a correlation or relationship between two things does not necessarily mean that one thing caused the other. To draw a cause and effect conclusion, researchers must use experimental research. Experimental research, in its simplest form, it involves comparing two groups on one outcome measure to test some hypothesis regarding causation. If a researcher is interested in the effects of a new medication on headaches, the researcher would randomly divide a group of people with headaches into two groups. One of the groups, the experimental group, would receive the new medication being tested. The other group, the control group, would receive a placebo medication. Besides receiving the different medications, the group would be treated exactly the same so that the research could isolate the effects of the medications. After receiving the medications, both groups would be compared to see whether people in the experimental group had fewer headaches than people in the control group. Assuming this study was properly designed, if people in the experimental group had fewer headaches than people in the control group, the researcher could conclude that the new medication reduces headache. Let us learn a few terms related to research. A theory. A theory is a conceptualization or description of a phenomenon that attempts to integrate all that we know about the phenomenon into a concise statement or question. Variables. A variable is anything that can take on different values. It can be height, weight, age, attitude, IQ, or variables because there are different heights, different weights, different ages, attitudes, and IQs. This variable is classified into two. The one is independent variable and the other one is dependent variable. The independent variable is called independent because it is independent of the outcome being measured. More specifically, the independent variable is what causes or influences the outcome. The dependent variable is called dependent because it is influenced by the independent variable. For example, in our hypothetical study examining the effects of medication on the symptoms of depression, the measure of depression is the dependent variable because it is influenced by the independent variable medication. Contrast to variable, it's the constant. If something cannot vary or it cannot take on different values, then it is referred to as a constant. Now, knowing all the basic technical terms in the subject, let us give a precise definition for research. Research is an examination of the relationship between one or more independent variables or one or more dependent variables. Even more precisely, we can define research as an examination of the effects of one or more independent variables on one or more dependent variables. Looking at the criterions for research problems, good research problems must meet three criteria. These are mentioned by Kerlinger in 1973. The first, the research problem should describe the relationship between two or more variables. Second, the research problem should take the form of a question. Third, the research problem must be capable of being tested empirically, that is, with the data derived from direct observation and experimentation. When we look for the type of research, we come across a lot of them based on varied categories. A few of them are on display in the screen. Historical, content analysis, ethnographic, action, survey, causal or comparative, correlational, single subject, experiment. Going into the broad category, there are two broad categories of research with which researchers must be familiar. The first one is quantitative and qualitative research. Quantitative research involves studies that make use of statistical analysis to obtain their findings. Key features include formal and systematic measurement and the use of this statistics. Qualitative research involves studies that do not attempt to quantify the result through statistical summary or analysis, but qualitative studies typically involve interviews and observations without formal measurement A case study, which is an in-depth examination of one person, is a form of qualitative research. Qualitative research is often used as a source of hypothesis for later testing in quantitative research. This is a small illustration on difference between quantitative and qualitative researches. The second category is nomothetic versus ideographic approach. The nomothetic approach uses the study of groups to identify general laws that apply to a large group of people. The goal is often to identify the average member of the group being studied or the average performance of a group member. The ideographic approach is the study of an individual. An example of the ideographic approach is the aforementioned case study. The choice of which research approaches to use largely depends on the type of questions being asked in the research study. And different fields of research typically rely on the different categories of research to achieve their goals. Social science research, for example, typically relies on quantitative research and the nomothetic approach. In other words, social scientists study large groups of people and rely on statistical analysis to obtain their findings. Here, in this presentation, the first broad category of research, that is quantitative research, will be the primary focus. Quantitative research. It is easier to understand the different types of quantitative research designs if you consider how the researcher designs for control of the variables in the investigation. If the researcher views quantitative design as a continuum, one end of the range represents a design where the variables are not controlled at all and only observed. Connections amongst variables are only described. At the other end of the spectrum, however, are designs which include a very close control of variables and relationships amongst those variables are clearly established. In the middle, with experiment design moving from one type to the other, is a range which blends those two extremes together. There are four main types of quantitative research: descriptive, correlational, causal, comparative or quasi-experimental, and experimental research. This is how, within a quantitative research, the survey research, correlational research and experimental research are interrelated. Descriptive research. It seeks to describe the current status of an identified variable. These research projects are designed to provide systematic information about a phenomenon. The researcher does not usually begin with an hypothesis, but is likely to develop one after collecting data. The analysis and synthesis of the data provide the test of the hypothesis. Systematic collection of information requires careful selection of the units studied and careful measurement of each variable. Examples of descriptive research can be description of the tobacco use habits of teenagers, or a description of the attitudes of scientists regarding global warming, a description of the kinds of physical activities that typically occur in nursing homes and how frequently each occurs, etc. Correlational research. It attempts to determine the extent of a relationship between two or more variables using statistical data. In this type of design, relationships between and among a number of facts are sought and interpreted. This type of research will recognize trends and patterns in data, but it does not go so far in its analysis to prove causes for these observed patterns. Cause and effects is not the basis of this type of observational research. The data, relationships, and distribution of variables are studied only. Variables are not manipulated. They are only identified and are studied as they occur in a natural setting. Sometimes, correlational research is considered a type of descriptive research and not as its own type of research, as no variables are manipulated in the study. Examples of correlational research: the relationship between intelligence and self-esteem, relationship between diet and anxiety, the covariance of smoking and lung disease, the relationship between an aptitude test and the success in an algebra course. Causal comparative research or quasi-experimental research. This type of research attempts to establish cause-effect relationships among the variables. These types of designs are very similar to the true experiments, but with some key differences. An independent variable is identified but not manipulated by the experimenter, and effects of the independent variable on the dependent variable are measured. The researcher does not randomly assign groups and must use ones that are naturally formed or pre-existing groups. Identified control groups exposed to the treatment variable are studied and compared to groups who are not. When analysis and conclusions are made, determining causes must be done carefully, as other variables, both known and unknown, could still affect the outcome. Examples of correlation research: the effect of effect of taking multivitamins on a student's school absenteeism, or the effect of age on lung capacity, the effect of gender on algebra achievement, etc. Experimental research. This is often called true experimentation. It is so because it uses the scientific method to establish the cause-effect relationship among a group of variables that make up a study. The true experiment is often thought of as a laboratory study, but this is not always the case. A true experiment is any study where an effort is made to identify and impose control over all other variables except one. An independent variable is manipulated to determine the effects on the dependent variables Subjects are randomly assigned to experimental treatments rather than identified in natural groups. Examples of experimental research: the effect of a new treatment plan on any disease, or the effect of a new teaching strategy, the effect of teaching with a cooperative group strategy or a traditional lecture approach on students' achievement, the effect of positive reinforcement on attitude towards school, etc. A comparison of the effect of personalized instruction versus traditional instruction on computational skill. All these can be best examples for experimental research. The basic methodology for a quantitative research design is based on scientific methods. That is, the overall structure for a quantitative design is based in the scientific method. It uses deductive reasoning, where the researcher forms a hypothesis, collects data in an investigation of the problem, and then uses the data from the investigation after analysis is made and conclusions are shared to prove the hypothesis not false or false. The basic procedure of a quantitative design is: make your observations about something that is unknown, unexplained, or new. Investigate current theory surrounding your problem or issue. Step 2. Hypothesize an explanation for all those observations you have made. Step 3. Predict or make a prediction of outcomes based on your hypothesis. Formulate a plan to test your prediction. Step 4. Collect and process your data. Remember, if your prediction is correct, you can go to the next step, that is step 5. If not, the hypothesis has been proven false. Then return to step 2 again to form a new hypothesis based on your new knowledge. Step 5. Verify your findings. Make your final conclusions. Present your findings in an appropriate form for your audience, maybe in a presentation format, or you can publish it as a paper. Moving on to qualitative research. Qualitative research is defined as a market research. The method focuses on obtaining data through open-ended and conversational communication. It uses semi-structured methods. This method is not only about what people think, but also why they think so. Consider a convenience store looking to improve its patronage. A systematic observation concludes that number of men visiting this store are more. One good method to determine why women were not visiting the store is to conduct an in-depth interview of potential customers in the category. Qualitative research is based on the disciplines of social sciences like psychology, sociology, and anthropology. Therefore, the qualitative research methods allow for in-depth and further probing and questioning of respondents based on their responses, where the interviewer or the researcher also tries to understand their motivation and feelings. Understanding how your audience take decisions can help derive conclusions in market research. Looking into the types of qualitative research, qualitative research methods are designed in a manner that help reveal the behavior and perception of a target audience with reference to a particular topic. The results of qualitative methods are more descriptive, and the inferences can be drawn quite easily from the data that is obtained. The qualitative research methods originated in the social and behavioral sciences. Today, our world is more complicated, and it is difficult to understand what people think and perceive. Online qualitative research methods make it easier to understand that it is more communicative and descriptive. Looking into the types of qualitative research, one-on-one interview. Conducting in-depth interviews is one of the most common qualitative research methods. It is a personal interview that is carried out with one respondent at a time. This is purely a conversational method and invites opportunities to get details in depth from the respondent. One of the advantages of this method, it provides a great opportunity to gather precise data about what people believe and what their motivations are. Focus groups. A focus group is also one of the commonly used qualitative research method, probably in data collection. A focus group includes a limited number of respondents, maybe 6 to 10, from within your target market. Main aim of the focus group is to find answers to the why, what, and how questions. One advantage of focus group is you don't necessarily need to interact with the group in person. Focus groups are an expensive method as compared to the online qualitative research methods, other online qualitative research methods. Typically, they are used to explain complex processes. This method is very useful when it comes to market research on new products and testing new concepts. Ethnographic research. Ethnographic research is the most in-depth observational method that studies people in their naturally occurring environment. This method requires the researcher to adapt to the target audience's environment, which could be anywhere from an organization to a city or any remote location. This research design aims to understand the cultures, challenges, motivations, and settings that occur. Instead of relying on interviews and discussions, you experience the natural settings firsthand. Case study. The case study method has evolved over the past few years and developed into a valuable qual research method. As the name suggests, it is used for explaining an organization or an entity. This type of research method is used within a number of areas like education, social sciences, and similar. This method may look difficult to operate. However, it is one of the simplest ways of conducting research, as it involves a deep dive and thorough understanding of the data collection methods and inferring data. Fifth one is record keeping. This method makes use of the already existing label documents and similar sources of information as the data source. This data can be used in new research. This is something like going to a library. There we can go over books and other reference material to collect relevant data that can likely be used in research. The last one is process of observation. Qualitative observation is a process of research that uses subjective methodologies to gather systematic information or data. Since the focus on qualitative observation is the research process of using subjective methodologies to gather information or data. Qualitative observation is primarily used to equate quality differences. Qualitative observation deals with 5 major sensory organs and their function is sight, smell, touch, taste and hearing. This doesn't involve measurements or numbers, but instead it involves on characteristics. The basic differences between qualitative research methods and quantitative research methods are simple and straightforward. They differ in their analytical objectives, type of question asked, data collection instruments, form of data produced, and the degree of flexibility. Here we can see the major differences within these attributes. Analytical objectives. Qualitative research method focuses on describing individual experiences and beliefs, whereas quantitative research focuses on describing the characteristics of a population. In qualitative research, open-ended questions are asked, whereas in quantitative research, closed-ended questions. Checking for the data collection instrument, qualitative research uses semi-structured methods such as in-depth interviews, focus groups, and participant observation. The quantitative research method uses highly structured methods such as structured observation, questionnaires, surveys, experiments, etc. The form of data produced is descriptive in the qualitative case and numerical in the quantitative case. The degree of flexibility. The participant responses affect how and which questions researchers ask next. Speaking clearly, the response of a question is the key cause for the next question to be asked. But in the case of quantitative research, the participant responses do not influence or determine how and which questions researchers ask next. Okay, now we can have a look at a small balance between the quantitative and qualitative research. There are some major differences based on categories. Structured data, unstructured, statistical, summary, survey and experiment, interview and observation, objective, subjective. Okay. Difference. Talking of research, it's not something which you use for your academics in your college or to enrich your knowledge. Research is part of our life. Whether you learn, whether you write the hypothesis and you publish a paper or not, each and every day we learn, we research and we create hypotheses irrespective of the nature we present it. Research is part of our life. Research is important in our everyday life because it leads us to the ultimate philosophy of all the subjects and builds a graphic vision of life. It empowers us with knowledge and efficient learning of new things. It helps us in understanding various issues of life in a larger manner. Research improves quality of life because it is a self-learning experience. Research might provide us ability to form intellectual stance on certain subject and take sides. Researching topics that helps us improve our intellectual and perceptions expands our views regarding significant things in life. The benefits of research can be positive impact from the research to the parties directly involved, as well as the demonstrable contribution of research to knowledge, our economy, individuals, and society. It gives us a light to inquire about the right information. It develops an attitude to not believe everything easily available and to go on one track. The research sharpens the brain and gives it a judicious vision to look. It evolves us to mark out the thin line between truth and lie. It opens new vistas of opportunity before us to pick and choose. Research makes good habits of reading, analyzing, thinking, and learning. These are the benefits. So, research is part and parcel of human life. If you do search or research well, you will have a better life. If you search less or understand things less, your life in the earth will not be as fruitful as a person who searches for it daily. Dear friends, life is itself a research. So, let me conclude with the qualitative and quantitative. Thank you to all of you for your patient hearing and presence. Thank you. May God bless you. If you have any queries, you can post your questions. Will be answered in the answering session. You can contact me personally. Dear academicians, be a researcher, cherish your life. Thank you.